Good evening, everyone. My name is Ruban Roberts with RER Consulting. I'm here tonight at the Top Cutters Barbershop in Miami Gardens off of 27th Avenue and 183rd Street. Good friend of mine is the founder of this shop, Michael Stevens, who should be joining us a little bit later on. But I have two very distinguished guests. One, Mr. Ed Ponder. He is everything Miami extraordinaire. If you ever come down here, you need concierge service for anything. If you need a hotel stay, you want to rent a Bugatti, or you want to do any of that stuff, Brother Ed Ponder can hook you up. And then we have none other than the famous Dr. Steve Gallen III. Dr. Steve Gallen III is a school board member here in the third largest school district. Is that correct? Fourth largest school district. Brother's the trailblazer, was one of the youngest principals in Dade County schools, one of the youngest superintendent on the national level of schools up in New Jersey. And tonight we're going to just have a real talk among men about issues pertaining to men. The overlay is going to be around mental health, but I just want you to know that this is something that we feel that's important for us to get out and talk to folks about. So I'm encouraging you to get your family members, your friends, and bring them to to watch this episode. We are pre-recorded, but you can always leave any chat questions or comments in the chat. And then if you leave those in the chat, we'll promise to get back to you to let you know what those, to answer those questions or to respond to whatever comments that you have. So without further ado, I've already introduced them, and I just want to say good evening, gentlemen. How y'all doing today?
It's all good, man. I'm just finding out Ed Ponder got the plug on the Bugatti. I know a few people. Bugatti. I saw something on social media the other day. Somebody was actually driving might have been a Bugatti. They were trying to drive it into a driveway, but it was so low, and it scraped the paint. And the person says, "Why didn't you tell me?" The guy says, "Because I don't drive a Bugatti. You know, it's not a problem with me coming into my driveway." So now I know. No, it's always a pleasure, man, to be with you all. Been knowing this brother here for over 3 decades. Truly a pillar in the community, and always willing and excited to stand with you, brother, in solidarity and support of the work on behalf of our young people in this community overall.
Appreciate you.
Listen, I'm just glad to be here, man, with two old friends for many, many years, still doing great work, not selfish work, but great work for people in the community. You know, it's an interesting, dynamic when you have people like us that grew up in the community, that stayed in the community, but continues to work and serve in the community. And I'm just glad that I'm sharing the spotlight with you guys.
Yeah, so I want to say that all of us are doing community service. I was remiss in mentioning that Ed Ponder is also over the men's ministry at Antioch Missionary Baptist Church in Miami Gardens. So again, if you want to get a good word, the pastor there is Arthur Jackson III, and is well known to all three of us.
Yes.
Pastor to all three of us.
Absolutely.
And a great guy. So today I just want to start out, man. I just want us to have a real conversation. But what I want you guys to do is really think about the context, right? I knew y'all I knew you when you were kind of young. But Ed, I knew you when you were very young.
Hey, and we're going to stop right there. Just keep right there. Keep going.
Forever young. Anybody who's watching this, say Dr. Gallen's song is Jay-Z Forever Young. Me and Jay-Z, same age. Blue Ivy and Zoe, same age. Forever young here.
You're forever young.
Forever young.
So I want you to put it in perspective when we talk about black men and mental health and wellness. And one of the things I know, we growing up in Miami, I grew up between Miami and the Bahamas, but growing up in Miami, we've all lost friends at a very young age.
Many friends.
Yes. And I think that we've all had some sort of historical trauma in our lives, but we push on and, we moved on with our lives and our careers and such. But those things linger, right? And I know a lot of brothers experience pain and hurt, and they don't always feel comfortable talking about it or coming to another brother and talking about it. So what do you guys think about that, and what should we do as men and to encourage others to not suffer in silence?
Well, I think it's something that regretfully is ingrained in our DNA, coming from the shores of Africa against our will, coming through that Middle Passage. our ancestors suffered and witnessed horrific conditions, horrific experiences, but we sit here in this barbershop today because they had that persevering spirit. They had that spirit of resilience, that spirit of hope and optimism, but regretfully, they had to kind of grin and bear it. You know, you fast forward right now going through the abolition of slavery, through the abolitionist movement, through the civil rights movement. Our society, specifically our men, have had to go through tremendous periods of, quite frankly, emasculation.
Right.
Because to do what was done to us as a people had to go through a period of emasculating.
Continue to go to that period.
So when you look at what happened to the family, how do you destroy the family? You start with the head.
Right.
The Bible says the head of the family is the man. So you historically start with that. But our spirit of resilience has taught us to continue to persevere. Regretfully, many of us have witnessed tremendous tragedy. I mean, I tell people all the time, the first time I saw somebody get killed was out in front of my neighborhood playing street football. We played football in the street, Ed. It wasn't always in the field. You know, I hear these municipalities talking about we need green spaces. Back in the 70s and 80s, we didn't have green spaces. We played tackle football.
On the asphalt.
On asphalt.
Okay.
We didn't have grass, what I'm trying to say.
You know, and then you tackle somebody in the dirt. But, you know, that was the first time I actually saw somebody have their life taken. And it was a father taking the life of his son.
Oh, no.
Yes. And we, you know, not being lost on the police coming around, but it was almost as if, okay, who had the ball next? You know, we just continued to move on.
Moving.
And that's something that's regretfully been in us. I've had to work through that. I think Tupac summed it up best in the song Life Goes On, and that's something we've kind of held on to it. How many brothers fell victim to the streets? Rest in peace, young G, there's a heaven for a G.
Right.
You know, life goes on.
Life goes on.
But regretfully, life goes on in many cases where we kind of suffer in silence and we don't deal with some of the mental and emotional anguish that we have because it's not cool to do that.
Right. So what you're saying really speaks to that whole emotional intelligence piece too, because what happens is when you take on that role that life goes on, and then you know that you just got to keep it moving, what ends up happening is you end up having, psychologically, you become cold. You become, immune to pain and tragedy, at least on the surface you do.
Even when it's not real.
Right.
Yeah.
Even on the surface you do.
Right.
But inside.
You compartmentalize it.
Yeah, you compartmentalize
hide
it, right.
You suppress it.
That's right.
And the truth is, we don't know. I mean, as a young black man, I'm gonna go back to Dr. Gallen, Steve. You know, we go back. I lived in Liberty Square. You know, so I live in an area. Steve talking about the first time he saw someone get their life taken. I saw an ice cream man get robbed and killed, and while he's dying and dead, people getting ice cream out the truck.
That's right.
And we're like, okay, the mindset then is life goes on.
Right.
We still got to eat.
Right.
And he got ice cream in here.
Right.
And so, and that's the community we grew up in. So you literally grew up in from slavery until today, in a world where such toughness is your survival kit.
Violence
is your survival kit.
Yeah.
You know, being hard, being real, being masculine, being strong. Me outdoing you, me outdueling you. So and even if I don't believe or know I'm not stronger than you, it's my obligation culturally to act like it, to show it. And I can never concede to not knowing it or believe that you're better than me. I would never tell you that you're better than me. I would never tell you that you look better, that you got more. It's just not in our DNA.
Right.
So we're living in a falsehood our entire lives.
And a lot of it has to do with the expectation that's placed on men, young black men. I mean, let's just face it. I don't know about you all, but there was a time that we didn't get spankings, we got whoopings.
That's right.
Beatings.
Yeah.
But when you get spanked many times, and even today, what's the first thing comes out of a parent's mouth to the child after they got spanked?
Don't cry.
You bet not cry. Damn, you just gave me like, come on, what you mean don't cry?
We know it.
Why don't you see what that feels like?
Don't cry.
But you bet not cry. Or after you done beat me, you want something to cry for? You just gave me something to cry for.
I'm supposed to cry.
But you know, that's what we're taught. And that, you know, being able to express oneself emotionally runs counter to what it is to be a man, and that's what we're taught. And I think we have to kind of get away from that, because we see legions of young men, young boys, quite frankly,
Right.
that are desensitized to not only things that afflict them,
Right.
but hurt, harm, and danger, and even death
Everybody.
that they place on other people. I mean, we just saw the other day, 89-year-old grandmother
Yeah.
shot.
Yeah.
89 years she can live in that neighborhood. Well,
Right.
not, she was blessed in 71.
Right.
I mean, these young guys were running and busting at each other, just totally desensitized to what it
Without
is
disregard.
for life.
Right.
And I
And
think
is
some
it-
of these things is something that's ingrained, and we have to do a better job of that.
You know. You invoke Jay-Z, and I'm going to invoke him too. You know, he says nobody win when the family feuds, you know.
Yeah.
What's better than $1 millionaire too. So I think that one of the things that we need to really be focusing on is how we bring these young guys, you know, to the reality. Because what ends up happening is a lot of them end up going away for a while, or, you know, end up not surviving. But those who come back home, they realize the error of their ways. And society is not always accepting of folks who've done some time. And so what I'm hoping that we can do today is really convey some messages to some young folks who may be watching this, that maybe will steer them in a different way. I mean, a life, it's not like television. You're not going to show up on another episode of another series, right? When you take a life, you can't unring that bell. That thing is done. And so what happens is that there's so much of that trapped energy. Yes, there are kids who've been beaten. There are kids who've been beaten by their parents, beaten up by their community, beaten up by people, you know, that they are close to. And so when you internalize all of that anguish, that grief, that hurt, that harm, when it comes out, you know, like they said, you know,
Vicious.
pressure breaks pipes. That pressure would definitely break that kid, that young man turns into the person that you didn't want him to be. So you were about to say something, Ed. Go ahead and jump in.
You know, and the dynamic of us being here in the barbershop, I found this very interesting.
Right.
Because even, you know, all of us, I would venture to say all young men, you know, grow up in the barbershop.
That's right.
You know, my current barber, my childhood barber, actually, you know, cut my son's hair. And both of them in their 30s now.
Right.
So my barber's been my childhood friends now, a lifetime barber. And they grew up in a barbershop. So imagine what the view is from the young boys coming with their single moms, coming to the barbershop, hearing the lies, hearing the strength, the masculinity, the toughness. We talk about sports. We talk about LeBron's not tough enough. You know, oh, he didn't get hit that hard. You know, he's soft. And so these messages that even the young boys, when they're in homes with their mom, you know, don't cry. So our whole world, our whole dynamic is built around creating this sense of strength and this sense of indifference to pain and to hurt. So they ask you a question. You know, you grow up not being able to show your emotion, not being able to show your emotion, because it's soft.
Right.
But then you start dating somebody. Say, well, how do you feel? You're like, well, feel. I don't know.
It doesn't resonate
I don't
with you.
have an
Right.
emotional feeling.
Right.
Because it's never registered.
Right.
And that's the challenge that young men, and we don't teach each other. We don't allow each other.
So how do we teach? Both of you answer that. How do we teach to have that level of compassion? How do we teach someone who's grew up a very hard life, or someone who may not have grown up so hard, but culturally, because what we're talking about right now are cultural differences, right? And so from a cultural perspective, how do we teach our youth, our younger folks, and some older ones, how to really connect with their emotions and be mindful of how the things they do say and act will affect others?
I think the best way, coming from an educational standpoint, and I'm not talking about curriculum and pedagogy, I'm talking about education. Education in the Latin terms means to bring forth, to lift up, to bring out. We have to teach by example.
That's right.
That's number one.
That's right.
That's number one. Number two, when we start talking about what our young people see, that represents what they'll be.
That's right.
And
In most cases.
we don't have in many cases, we
Yeah.
don't have the role models from an emotional standpoint, from a family standpoint, as we should. So I think it comes down to our men teaching our young men the skill set, both emotionally, mentally, psychologically, what it is to be a man, and to debunk this whole notion that to be insensitive, to be anti-emotional, to be disconnected and disengaged is not masculine. I've always had a commitment. My father, I must admit, my late father, I knew he loved me.
Yeah.
I knew he loved me. But if I had to tell you right now that my father said those words to me, I love you.
Never said it.
I can't remember that. I mean, I can't remember him saying that to me.
So let
I
me
knew
say,
he loved me.
let me say this. So we grew up in the era where love was defined by you got a roof over your head, right? You got food on the table. At least for my house, that's how my father shared his love for me. And I didn't understand it as a kid because it was different. My mom showed me so much love. And then the dad just wanted me to be, strong enough to withstand whatever pressures I was going to face. And both of them, I didn't realize it until I became a parent. Both of them were fearful of me being a young black man growing up and all of the challenges that I would face. And I didn't understand that. So my father was preparing me from one place to be strong, like you said, to be resilient, deal with these pressures,
Right.
not show emotions, not let people see you weak or or crying or that sort of thing. And my mother showed me that other side. She gave me that nurturance and that support. But I didn't mean to interrupt you so much. But I just wanted to let you know that.
And it's not an either or, it's a both and.
Right.
In life, we usually have to say it's either going to be this or that.
Right.
It can be both, and,
Right.
and we all know the Word of God says there's power in the tongue.
Right.
So we need to hear those words.
That's right.
We need to see it demonstrated,
Right.
So it's not just what you say, it's what you do. But it's
Right.
not what you say and not what you do. It's not what you do and not what you say. It's a combination of both.
That's right.
And I mean, yes, my father loved me. And even when I became of age to be able to tell him I love him too, his answer was not necessarily I love you back. His answer was like, hey, we together. That was his cool way of saying I love you too.
Right.
Now, what do? You undo that. You, in the words of shout out to Charles Williams and Generational Q, I love breaking that cycle.
Right.
So you break that cycle and you say, I'm going to parent differently. I'm going to model differently. I'm going to express differently with my children than was expressed to me.
Did
So
you
we
do
have-
that with the first ones?
Yes, absolutely. My son,
So it started from the first ones. You wanted to
absolutely.
break that cycle
So
with
I break
the
that
first.
cycle. I was a teenage
Yeah.
father.
Right, I
Young
know,
lady,
that's what I'm
16
asking.
years old.
Yeah.
So I mean, I adored my daughter. I was right there with her. Then I had a son when I was coming out of college, and right there with him. But those words and those expressions of "I love you" was said. It was stated, and it was demonstrated to the best
Is
extent.
it still
that I could.
said?
Absolutely.
All the time.
Not all the time.
Okay. So, but consistently.
Consistently.
Okay.
My
so
daughter.
all the time is not but consistently.
My daughter was visiting me yesterday. My twins' birthday today. They turned 17 years old. My grandchildren. My children and my grandchildren, we express that. Does my son say it all the time? Do I say it all the time? But we'll say it.
Consistently.
We'll say it.
And to piggyback off that, I have 2 adult sons.
Right.
Both in their 30s. And I'm proud to say that I talk to both of my sons at least 2 days a week.
Okay.
Each of them, and they both live out of state. But to break the cycle was important to me. And you talk about being an example. How do we break that cycle? How do we change the narrative? It's by being an example and having authentic, real, transparent conversations. And allowing not just ourselves, but I think everyone plays a role. Our
Right.
athletes play a role. Our celebrities play a role. We as black men universally play a role in being an example of transparency, being authentic, being real, talking about hurt and pain and challenges and overcoming. I mean, it's great you can lift 450 pounds, but how do you get over hurt, or do you hurt? I mean, just really, not. I don't want to say exposing ourselves, but expressing ourselves. Really, because we don't want to say exposing, but we say expressing your real truth. That because we don't allow our young people to see and to understand some of the challenges that we go through inwardly.
So
And
I'm
we
going to
have-
say this to y'all, because y'all paint this picture, right? That, hey, I did it with my kids, that sort of thing. But you had to get to a place,
Yes.
you know, and I want you to talk
3:1
about
says
that.
there's a season.
Right.
There's a season, and you get to that season.
Right. So I want y'all to talk about that, because I don't want the viewers or the listeners to think, okay, they come in and they're making it seem like they were already always there, already there.
No, they ain't say that.
So talk about that journey, because sometimes I think the message and the lesson is in the journey, when they can understand how you arrived to the place to where you say, okay, I knew this is something I was missing, and I needed to make sure that I got that to my family, my kids.
Yeah, I just embraced growing up in Liberty City, this whole reality that the role of a father is to provide and protect.
Right.
Provide and protect. Now, how you go about doing that varies from one household to the other. But if you can fall into those two buckets of protection and provision, you at least getting there. And I understood for me that I had to be present to provide and protect. How about that alliteration, right? You got to be present to provide and protect.
Right.
Now, some people would say I don't have to be present. I can provide and not be there, but I don't think it's an either or. I think you got to be present, because part of that provision is your presence. I'm providing presence in the life of my child, and to do that, that was a journey for me. And that epiphany came when I visited a friend of mine. He's deceased right now in Dade County Jail. He had gotten in some trouble. We all were out there, and he was on the 10th floor. And an inmate that was being visited by his girlfriend and his child, his visit was over. And I never forget, the young lady grabbed the baby's hand. She put it to the glass. The inmate put his hand to the glass, and that's how he said bye. And that was an epiphany for me, because I now had a child.
Right.
And I had to be present to protect and provide. So that was a part of that journey, and that really never stopped. And that was ingrained in me consistently throughout my parenting and everything else that I had to do. But going throughout that process, I understood too that words mattered. Words mattered. And those are some things that, you know, we never got the book. I'm still looking in the mail. I don't know about y'all. Maybe y'all got y'all book on what it is to be a father. I mean, what it is to be a man.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I've tried to be a role model in that vein, to let others see what real fatherhood can represent and be about. In this age of social media, it's not necessarily commercial, it's my life, but
Right.
we have to be willing to open up our lives, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and the beautiful.
Right.
And the beauty. There's beauty in fatherhood. There's
Right.
beauty in parenting. There's beauty in love. And our young people, our young men have to see that.
Right. And women, our young daughters have to see it as well. All right, so Steve, thanks for that. What's your answer to that? How talk about your journey, how you were able to get to the place to where you could express love and that for your kids. I know we just didn't arrive there.
No,
We
it
were
didn't just arrive. You know,
Yeah.
it's actually, you know, I admit at this adult age, I can admit that I'm a tearer.
Okay.
I tear up about a lot of things.
Right.
You know, movies, and I had to learn to accept that and share, be honest about it. And even some of the reflection, you talked about losing friends. One of the earliest points of this conversation, you talk about losing friends. I lost a friend, Tony Williams, in 8th grade. And I still remember the name, the place, the look, you know, cool cat. But I was shown love by my grandmother.
Okay.
I'm a grandma's boy.
Okay.
22 years later, I'm still a grandma's boy.
Right.
She's, you know, gone to be glory. But she showed me love. But I wasn't shown love for my father.
Right.
He was absent. He wasn't present. I had a stepfather who was present, who was not in the showing love, I love, not even expressions. So I got the dynamic of an absent father, a present, you know, disconnected stepfather, but a loving, very present grandmother. So I was able to see what was there and see what wasn't there and see what was there that wasn't there. So I broke the cycle by saying, when I realized as a teenager that I was going to be a father, I had to shift and say, well, how do I not do what's been done?
You were thinking like that at that time?
Listen, it bothered me so much. And I wasn't saying, well, it wasn't a plan,
Right.
it was an action. It was a reaction. Like, you know what? I just said, well, I need to own up. And my grandmother wouldn't have had any other way.
Right,
My
right.
mother wouldn't have had any other way. And so I've always kind of shown, and I realized even at an early age that I need to make sure that I am preparing him, like you say, your mother and father prepared you different ways.
Yeah.
Well, I knew what lies ahead. I knew what lies ahead. So I said, well, how do I prepare you for that? How do I best prepare you? Because I didn't have a father show me how to wash a car, didn't have anybody show me how to fix the engine, change tires. That was something that the streets taught me. The streets taught me, the Old Testament. The Old Testament for me came out of the streets. So for me, it was really about realizing that I had already been on the grind. How do I ungrind him?
Right.
And set him up for success, set both of them up for success. It's through constant communication and through seeing, hearing, and your discernment, even as a young man, you know what's right or wrong.
Right.
But really, what got me was fear. Fear of disappointing my grandmother.
Yeah.
That's what helped me.
Yeah.
A lot of times we don't listen to that voice. We know what's right, what's wrong, and I saw enough wrong. I saw enough loss. I saw enough hurt, enough death, enough pain to say, oh, wait a minute. It's like a guy says, do I want to play wide receiver or do I want to play, safety? He said, I don't want to play wide receiver because I don't want to get hit. Mm-hmm. That's what it is. I don't want to get hit. Cornerback said, I don't want to get hit. I can catch. Mm-hmm. So I decided, you know what? I don't want to get hit. So I'm going to play safety for my sons. And I'm going to teach them, I'm not going to do anything that's going to get me locked up, what I call terminal. Mm-hmm. Don't want to get killed, don't want to go to jail.
And see, I didn't have the benefit, I guess, of operating out of a spirit of fear. As much as I talk about my father, I love him dearly. My father never beat me. Never in my life did my father ever lay hands on me, ever. My father traveled a lot, so he was a protector and he was a provider, but he wasn't always present. Mm. I learned to tie a tie after I graduated from college. Shout out to Norvell Gainey. I dated his sister, and I learned how to tie a tie. I was a college graduate, didn't know how to tie a tie at the time. So those lessons, those real intimate lessons about how to maneuver, how to navigate as a man, weren't necessarily there. But again, when it comes to provision and protection, my father modeled that. He modeled discipline. He modeled structure. My mother was there, but they eventually divorced, and my mom left. So that was a critically important point in my life. My mom left. Not my dad, my mom left. And me and my mom were very, very close. And my dad traveled. So now I had to navigate coming out of 9th, 10th grade in Liberty City, school and life and the streets and friends. And that's put me in a position of vulnerability to make very, very bad decisions at the time. But I had a safety net of community stakeholders, of educators, of people around me. And my fear came from God. I was always scared to bust hell wide open.
Fear.
Okay, so I had that level of fear. And to the extent that I wanted to, again, be present in the lives of my children, that was a defining metric for me. That was a defining motivation for me. And I think that's something that's critically important that our fathers especially. I mean, we can talk about mothers. Mothers always stand in the pain.
Right.
Our women, shout out to the women. I love our women.
Absolutely.
I love y'all. Love our women. They stand in the pain. Shout out to the brothers. But throughout history, our women stand in the pain. Right now, we're seeing a tremendous vacuum of men standing in the pain. And it's not because many don't want to. We have to figure out this family structure. And very often, our family structures are predicated on relationships between adults. And those relationships are not reconciled at the expense of children. So that's a whole nother conversation.
Sometimes not even adults.
But
what he's saying,
I
get what he's saying.
Figure it out
you can't figure
between
it out.
each other,
But the kids
but
suffer.
they
The kids
can't-
suffer.
Yeah, the
Exactly.
kids
And
suffer,
so we have to figure that out within the family structure. And again, we have a system that does not necessarily perpetuate the building and the maintaining and the sustaining of the family. So historically, as a community of black people, of brown people, we always figured that out for ourselves. But we have to kind of be intentional about that in ways that really unpack those things that impede us, those things that preclude us, and those things that at the end of the day hurt us as a family and as a community.
one of the things that I just want to recap some of the things that were said here today. So the importance of, really pouring into your kid's life is that you have to be present. You can't be an absentee person. You need to be present in your children and your family, your spouse or your significant other's life. You have to be present. You have to also be able to be willing to be vulnerable, to show that you care, that you love, and say those words. Words have power. We can change a whole lot by just sharing with a kid that we love them. One of the things that I grew up with, and I want to say to you all, Dr. Gallen had a very famous father.
Yes.
So folks who know him, they know how famous he was. So people knew he was that guy's son.
Right.
You understand at the same time. Same thing with me. My father in the Bahamas, same thing. But one of the things I loved about what Bahamian men did, and here, they did it over here too when I was younger. Just like I went and spoke to your daughter today, and I big upped you to your daughter. So that's one of the things that we have to make sure that we do, that we encourage the children by, highlighting the positives about their parents. Because every kid wants to be like their parent. You know what I mean? But if all you hear, and this is what's you were alluding to earlier, when you have two adults that can't reconcile.
Family structure.
Yeah, when you have an adult speaking ill about another parent, and then that really destroys that kid.
That's
because,
trauma.
Yeah, that's
trauma.
Yeah.
That's trauma.
Yeah, because that you're saying, hey, that this part of you is jacked up.
And the kid remembers that.
Yeah, the kid would definitely remember that.
The most contentious incident I had with my father was when he said something about my mother.
Oh yeah.
That was the most contentious. Other than that, me and my father were like two people. We were thick. I mean, I love him. That's my man.
Right.
But he expressed some comments about my mom, and that led to a high level of indignation on my part. And I left. I literally left. I left the house, and I went to a family friend, the late Sally Bradshaw Williams, Miss Adelie, and I stayed with her a couple of days, and eventually went back. But that was, she said, you don't say anything about his mother, no matter what that situation is.
Right.
And that's something we have to model, and that's something that created some level of trauma.
Right.
With respect to that, and that's what we have to do as men, and not only be reactive in our defense, but I use that word, not defending our children and the families, but protecting our children and families. And there's a difference.
Right.
When you're defending, you're in retreat. When you're protecting, you're much more proactive. And I
Right.
think we have to take that posture with our families. And one last thing I want to mention, I say this all the time. I just said it at Betty T. Ferguson when I did some comments Saturday at an event about entrepreneurship with youth. And anybody hear me speak to the youth in District 1 or throughout, I often say at the end of my speech, and as I close, I like to, thank you, da-da-da. And if nobody else told you, your school board member, Dr. Steve Gadden III, loves you.
Right.
I say that to large groups of kids because our children don't hear that.
Right. They don't hear
They don't
enough.
hear that.
Right.
I say that intentionally. It could be an audience of 5, an audience of 5,000,
Right.
and I say those words.
It's important to hear.
Right.
And I want to say, and to that point, we talk about our children, but we also have an opportunity and a responsibility to parent in a mentoring way to those who are not our direct children. Whether it be, I walked past a young man on last Wednesday or Thursday, outside early in the morning, sitting outside of a 7-Eleven. It was school time, 9 o'clock in the morning, and he's sitting outside with his book bag. And I said, "Hey man, you all right?" He said, "I said, like, what's happening? What's going on? You waiting on the bus? It's 9 o'clock, so school has started." And he said, "Yes, I missed the bus, but I called the bus driver. He's gonna come back and pick me up." And that's okay. I'm just checking and make sure if you need, because the school was not far away, but he was going to a further school. But as I walked away, he said, "Thanks for checking." I said, "We need to check on each other."
Yeah. Most
Because
definitely.
I could have walked past him and just assumed and not commented, and also not even show him care. How many people are walking in and out of that 7-Eleven that just chalk them off?
Right.
And we can't chalk each other off because some of these young men have nobody else.
Right.
So if you and I don't take the time to encourage them to say something positive in their life, to speak favor and faith and opportunity and success in their life, they may never hear it.
Right.
He could be right on the edge of doing wrong. He could be at the edge trying to say, should I not? And your words of encouragement could be life-changing and life-saving. So I totally believe in taking the time. Listen, my sons have done well. I'm very proud of them. My daughter, I believe, is and trust and believe she's going to do very well. But I have an opportunity as an adult man to do for others what has been done to me, done for me. Mentoring, talk about people that mentored you. But there are men that have mentored me and poured into me and still pour into me. I have a responsibility and opportunity to do that.
So what do you say to that young man or grown man that doesn't have that, that's looking for that? So I remember as a young man, one of the things I was searching for was an identity. And I would read tons of books. I would go to the Afro books and things. And
7th Avenue.
Yeah. D.C. Clark happened to be one of my
Yes.
mentors. I became a part of his organization. And those brothers supported each other. And it's they say iron sharpens iron. And that man, supporting and encouraging another man really helps that man grow. And I'm saying to you this, the other part of what we were saying earlier, we talked about being present. We also talked about making sure that we affirm each other. We also talk about setting those boundaries. No matter what your difference is with your significant other, if y'all got a kid together, keep that between y'all on that level. Don't let that kid see that stuff. Let that kid see that they both respect and love you as a child, and whatever they got going on, that's something that you don't, you're not a part of.
Ruben, I wanna say before we close out, I wanna affirm you, brother. You've been a champion and a trailblazer in terms of exposing this whole discourse and dialogue about mental and emotional health. We know that in the black community, it's not cool to cry.
Right.
We don't get counseling.
Right.
We don't get therapy. If we get therapy, we think, all hell is about to break loose. And Michael Bazin had a book about 15, 20 years ago. Not that I want to get caught up in the book's content, but I always love the title, Men Cry in the Dark.
Right.
And what you've done through this particular work, my brother, you're providing a platform, knowing that men cry in the dark, but you creating a platform to bring light to our tears. And for that, I salute you, my brother.
Thank you, brother. That means a lot coming from you.
I'm still a firm believer in faith. I believe that a family that prays together will stay together. And if you're not together, there may not be a physical relationship together, but there's a unity in faith in the goals and the objective of that family. So I'm still believing and trusting that faith still will lead our families, individual faith and family faith. And so I encourage you as family members, as men, to seek some place that your faith can grow, that you can grow spiritually and mentally. And find someone that can pour into you, that can help you, that you can find and trust.
All right. Thank you guys for watching this show. I want you to know that this show is sponsored by RER Consulting with our two signature programs, Teen Talk and the COVID-19 Mental Health and Wellness Program. Most of what we talked about had an overlay about mental health and wellness. We talked about the trauma that we've all experienced. We talked about what happened historically. And then we talked about how we righted the ship, because all of us experience some of the same things. And so love, compassion, being able to be open emotionally, being able to tell someone that you love them, that you truly love, and being present doesn't cost anything to be present. Brothers, if you don't have a job, if you're not working, it doesn't cost anything for you to go and throw a ball with your child or, sit down and have tea with your daughter, that sort of thing. But we need to make sure that we do that to make a difference in our families. It's about legacy. It's about legacy. And what are we leaving? What are you leaving in terms of your legacy? And so this is the first of a multiple series of barbershop talks. We'll be going to different barbershops, have different guests on. I want to thank our illustrious guest today, Dr. Steve Gallen III and Mr. Ed Ponder for being on the show. I want to also encourage you to go to the website for the COVID Mental Health and Wellness Program, and that is mymentalhealthmiami.com. Click the survey button up in the right. Take the survey so you'll know your score, you'll know what's happening with you in the areas of stress, depression, and anxiety and levels of support. Listen, there's a stigma around mental health, but we are dealing with issues related to so much trauma that we are experiencing anxiety, stress, and depression on an enormous basis. So I encourage you to go. I want to thank you all for joining us tonight, and stay tuned for our next episode of Barbershop Talk. Good night.